skies, firefight calls. The stakes are high, turn the flame, heroes and spies. Control fire, where strategy lies. Hear the tales, fierce and deep. Victors roar, defeated weep. We blaze a way, we don't hold back. Control fire, ready to attack.
Hello and welcome to Controlled Fire, your monthly musings on Mantic's Firefight. I'm Sam.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Luke.
This month we're going to be looking at base size, because size matters. So we're going to look at base and unit size and all of the nuances this has on gameplay. Before we do, let's do some From the Forge. Mike, what you been working on? What's on your hobby table?
Not on my, well, actually a little bit going on my hobby table, but basically so I ran SpringCon, which was 1,500 event. We had 8 players there. Unfortunately, it was middle of school holidays, so we had some people who would normally attend not make it to that event. Luke. Congratulations, Sam, once again. So the check's in the mail, I assume, for
Sure.
the fact that we managed to take out another event this time, Ryan. So that was what I've done since the last podcast. And I've booked myself in for a gaming convention in November to demo Halo with another Pathfinder here in Brisbane, Kiva. He's doing one day, I'm going to do the other while we're actually there. So I'll be painting up my Halo stuff to demo that at that event.
Oh, that's very exciting.
Cool. Yeah, for me, mostly Kings of War Masters prep, because that's coming up. It's actually more organising event prep than my army. So now I'm like,
what are you going to play, Luke?
I don't know, pulling out my hair going, what do I play? I've got no time to practice anything. I'll just figure out a list that I like and then roll with that. So I have 8 possible lists.
Across 8 possible factions?
Across 4 factions. 4 or 5 factions, I think, that I'm still considering. I think at this point I've pretty much ruled out one of them, but then the other 3 are all good contenders. So I've just started printing stuff for them. Because I've got some Vault stuff to add to some things. And I thought, well, I've got to start printing. That was the analysis paralysis I had. I was like, I need to print stuff for pretty much any list. Some of them not many things, but some of them a lot. And I just thought I'll just start printing so I'm ahead of the game at least.
I'm crossing fingers you're printing Hellstrikers and Thunderseers for Riftforge Orcs.
That is one of my potential lists, but I'm not currently printing those. I'm currently printing something else.
Just because I know you've been enjoying having a bit of a look at orcs. So.
Yeah, and I plan to do that definitely for 4th edition when it rolls around. I want to keep the orcs going. They're my favourite army that I've got. I've really enjoyed playing orcs. So yeah, I'm looking how to take those into 4th. The other thing I've done more sci-fi related is that I bought 2 printed tanks to use as Wolverines for quite cheap at SpringCon. I could print tanks myself, but these were already printed and they were very good quality. They were very cheap and I could just finish gluing the bits together and I can paint them and I'll have some Wolverines, because the Wolverines are notoriously hard to get. So I pretty much gave up on the official Wolverines and found 2. So I thought I'll add them to my Marauders.
Very nice. Well, for myself, I'm also doing a lot of printing, but I'm printing terrain because I'm getting my 10mm battlefield ready for Epic Warpath. So I found some excellent STLs of a whole bunch of ruined buildings. So I'm going to have a ruined cityscape. I've blown a lot of resin on getting this table done. I'm hoping it looks good by the time it's done.
Yeah, it looks so, because it's a 6x4 table still, right? So to have teeny tiny terrain, you're going to need a lot of it, I would assume.
I believe that Epic Warpath asks for 2 roughly 6x6 sections for every 2-foot area of board. So You're looking at 12.
And do they have obstacles, or is it just...
Yeah, and that is for area terrain plus
like
obstacles as well.
Or something? Like, do they lie down a toothpick?
Funnily enough, the STLs I've got also have like tiny 10mm barricades and all of that. So I'm... For once in my life, I'm excited about terrain, so yeah, I'll ride this for as long as the passion takes me.
I think the tables excite me more than the game. There's going to be some really cool tables, I think, from Epic Warpath.
I'm also looking forward to my Epic Warpath stuff arriving. It's been a little bit delayed in the post, but when it arrives, I'll be getting the Astarians onto the board again. All right, so now we can start taking a look at the content of this episode where we're looking at base size. This kind of came about when we were doing some discussions in the chat about some of the factions tend towards having larger bases than others. Does this have any sort of impact on the way things play? So to delve a little bit deeper into this, Mike, tell us how this affects you.
I guess as the conversation started, those people probably may have picked up that I have an English accent. I was originally born in England, and therefore I have English DNA, which means that I'm very terrible at playing games that we've invented. And and the other one is I like to complain about everything, which you probably have picked up throughout this podcast over the last year. So I was complaining about Night Stalkers and the size of the bases, etc. And I was wondering whether or not base size would have been included in the costings of units because, for example, and it's not a direct comparison, they both do two completely different things, but a Plague Lord base and a Void Lurker base. A Void Lurker base is 4 times the size of a Plague Lord. And whether or not that sort of thing comes into play, which sparked the discussion which we started having about basically all things to do with size regarding the game of Firefight. So that's something that generally comes from what was said, one of my many complaints and whinges about different things within the game.
Well, we're going to ride this rant, so let's unpack how it actually impacts on things. Luke, do you have any thoughts on base size?
My first thoughts when we started talking about this was that I think shooting units often want bigger bases, whereas assault units usually want smaller bases. So, I've noticed through my time playing that if I've got units with bigger bases, that means that there's more ability for me to remain hidden and still get, that 2 millimeter of edge of your base poking around from behind something to gain vision of a unit to shoot at. Mm-hmm. So, and not just that, but also with steady aim being so such a good tool in your tool belt, being able to stay still and have a bigger footprint on your leader model or your only model, depending, and being able to draw more lines of sight from that one larger base is also a benefit because you can then just steady aim without moving and get rid of cover. So I think shooting units generally want bigger bases, or at least don't suffer from having bigger bases. Assault units, on the other hand, completely different story. You're often wanting to hide those. Maybe you want to have things like the leader poking out a little bit and the rest of the unit behind it building to keep cover while you try to gain lines of sight and whatnot. Assault units, I think, the bigger the base size, particularly when it comes to some of the bigger ones in Night Stalkers, becomes very, very hard to hide them completely hide them from shooting. That's probably the main thing. You can get cover often quite well, but to completely hide something with a big base, which you often want to do, hide them from shooting units, becomes very, very difficult.
Yeah, that's very fair because gaining cover often isn't enough if you're wanting to close the distance. That's just a -1 modifier. You actually want to tuck it entirely out of sight. And I really have noticed the difference between, say, my Plague Lord, which you mentioned, which is on a petite little 40 mil base. I'm able to tuck that behind buildings relatively simply compared to a Corruption or an Aberration, which is on a 60 mil. And I can only imagine the Void Lurker, which is an 80 mil base, must be very difficult to hide.
Yep. And in particular, like for something like Night Stalkers, right, with the stealthy and the low armor, you need all those negatives to survive. So if you can completely hide from the enemies so that they have to at least move to shoot you, now that's still a -2. But if they can get the tiniest edge of your base, then they can
steady aim.
They can steady aim and get rid of one of the negative ones, meaning that, it's much more likely that you'll take wounds. So at least having to force the enemy to move so they can't steady aim and you can still hopefully maintain cover is a really big benefit for assault units.
And don't forget the Void Ray's on 100 mil, so it's even larger again. So like the transport, and you got something hiding in it, and you're trying to get it up the board, and it's more difficult to do it. And I guess I said that's where the whole conversation came from, because I play my Night Stalkers quite assault focused. I don't have a lot of shooting. I know it's available there, and of course, most of my assault units are on larger bases. So that's where this sort of started from, but grew into other topics along the way.
And it's interesting, particularly for things like the larger bases on Night Stalkers, because they're larger base, but they're often still height 2. So that means things like or in the case of Reapers, for example,
yes,
they're on a 40 mil base, but they're height 2, which means that they may have difficulty hiding themselves as they get up the board. But in terms of fitting into a Nihilitas or a Portal, they actually fit in it better than a lot of the other 40 mil units do, which can surprise some people.
Yeah, like swarms and those sorts of units, they're all, because the height determines the capacity usage. They're not suffering from the height when it comes to capacity, which is good because it would really suck if they were, suffering from that problem as well.
If you could only fit 3 Reapers into an Nihilitas.
Yeah. Oh, gross. So yeah, at least they're not suffering from that, but I think they still do, overall suffer from the larger base size.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, there were kind of 2 concepts that I was thinking of in relation to base size and unit size, and we'll come to unit size after we finish here. So the 2 concepts are footprints, which I think a lot of people are familiar with, but we'll break down, and also reach, which we'll come to when we talk about unit size. So the idea of a footprint is that's the amount of space that the unit occupies on the battlefield. So that means if you have a larger base, it means that your unit is going to have a larger footprint. There are some times where having a large unit footprint is bad. So if you are trying to hide from a unit that is shooting at you, having a larger footprint means you are much harder to hide. If you're moving a unit, and you're needing to remain 1 inch away from friendly units and 1 inch away from enemy units that you're not charging, and trying to also move around terrain, having that larger footprint is bad too. It can also be bad, say you're trying to retreat from an assault. You need to be able to fit that unit wherever you end up to not be trapped. So having a large footprint can also be bad there too. Those are the use cases I came up with where the larger base size and then the larger footprint that's going to give you is bad. The ones I came up for where having a larger footprint is good is where you're projecting an aura or medic or inspiring or an order radius. There you want to be having a larger base size or a larger footprint. Let me take, say, inspiring or medic, for example. I will often extend my unit footprint by putting the medic in the middle and then having all of his retinue out to the sides, because the medic bubble is traced from the unit, so I can then extend by growing my footprint. Medic is a unit keyword, not one on the model. So that's a case where you can be using a larger unit footprint, if you had a larger base, say, in order to extend the benefit that you're projecting. The same also goes for inspiring and for auras. So say the aura that's on the planar apparition, the larger base there is a net benefit. It is worth noting that order radius, though, is only from the command model. That's specifically called out in the FAQ that medic, inspiring, and so on are a unit keyword, so you can measure from any model in that unit and anywhere in its footprint to anywhere in the unit that's going to be affected from its footprint. So having a larger unit footprint is a net benefit when you're receiving an aura, a medic, an inspiring, or an order, because then you're able to potentially say, be in assault range, I've been able to, or I'm in shooting range, I've gotten up close here, but I'm also projecting far enough back that I'm able to receive an order from a commander in the back line.
Yeah, I've definitely done that where you charge in, but you leave poor Barry sitting, not charging into combat because you have to maximize the models in combat, but moving forward to shoot or whatever and getting Firestorm because you've left Barry over there closer to the commander to be in the 6-inch bubble, which requires foreplanning because you need to move your commander into a place where you know he can reach where you need to be with the other units. But that's just good strategic play, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. But that is the way, the idea of using your unit footprint in order to make sure that you're within range to receive that and that you're also able to project it. Mike, I don't know if I've won you over saying there are some instances where a larger base is good. What do you think?
We were talking about the auras. The Butcher Flesh Rip on a 50 mil base. That's the only one that really gets
which I think is a net benefit on, say, a 40 mil base.
Yes, but most of the other stuff I'm playing with is on 25 mil base anyway, like other orders in there. So that's the only reason you're kind of looking at my expression on my face. Yeah, but unfortunately I'm playing all the units where it's completely opposite. I have big bases in assault and all my shooting stuff's on really small bases. But I mean, that's just the way I chose the army. That's not necessarily what's
But I also
really
don't think that most of those benefits really apply to Night Stalkers that much, right? Because yes, you can get a few extra millimeters of range on an aura or a commander, but ultimately, I don't think that those few millimeters tend to make the difference. But, particularly like we just said, if you've got a unit that wants to benefit from an aura, you can just leave one, you can push one model a bit closer. It rarely comes down to those few millimeters for those. Whereas the downsides always apply for the big base size. So I'm sure, like in other factions, maybe it becomes a bit more meaningful, those benefits, particularly Night Stalkers, where this all came from. I don't think benefit from those benefits as much.
Yeah, and I understand as well, before anyone goes in there, is the size of the models. Like, there's no way you can get the new Reapers on a 25mm model. They're on
without
25mm
dancing
base.
up with claws in the air.
They're basically doing that on a 40mm base, so on that sort of thing. So I get that in there. I said, for me, as I said, the conversation sort of started was, I wonder if base size is actually part of the costing of a unit because the next question obviously came to which I kind of sort of hinted, I guess one of the next ones is trying to fit even a 5 or a 6 man unit in coherency for Reapers is difficult because of the size of it as well. So I guess we might be skipping ahead there.
It becomes a juggling act, right? If you've got something designed to cause damage, there's only so much you can discount it based upon the downside of a base size before it becomes a very, very cheap killing machine. So the same thing goes for like Kings of War, right? Very large base sizes are quite detrimental to a unit that wants to kill things because there's more enemies can potentially charge it to kill it first. Things can more easily block it so that it can't charge at things and all those sorts of things. But you can't discount those units too much to account for the base size because then they become so cheap. You can just spam so many of them and just punch everyone off the table.
I will say that the prevalence with which I see Reapers also inclines me to think that they haven't been overcosted as a result of base size. I mean, I guess I'm also thinking because we ran the numbers on this, right? And basically each 2 Reapers is the same as roughly 3 Brawlers in terms of output and I think cost, except I think the Reapers have some extra hit points, that they have a little bit less armor, they have stealthy and no resilient and so on. But in terms of output, it was roughly the same that 3 Brawlers was the same as 2 Reapers. Now, I will also say as well, I mean, I guess those 2 Reapers are probably going to take up roughly about the same amount of space as 3 Brawlers.
I'd have to do the math, but we're pretty reasonably close to that, I would think, yes.
Well, I think Reapers are faster as well, so they also have that.
Sure, and they fit in the transport better for their
for their capabilities. The thing though is with the large base size versus small base sizes, you can conga line things. You can do other, you can put things in other way. You have more versatility in how you can place your models with smaller base sizes to sort of hide things as you need to, or at least to have enough in cover to gain cover. It's just harder with the larger bases.
That's very true. And it's also, I mean, occasionally we see people looking to use movement trays with Firefight. Well, I mean, even though I play armies that frequently take 30 models, I've never been inclined to, just because I want to have that flexibility of having my leader point and then what I do with my cloud of models around. There's a lot of tactics in there.
That's actually caught me out because I am very particular in general about where I position my models as well. But when I play my VMN, I just pick up a fistful of models and I plonk them down behind the leader and call it a day. Half of them are leaning over because I didn't stand them upright because there's just so many of the buggers. So I've been caught out a few times and gone, I should have specifically placed them where I wanted them. I just got lazy and picked up a fistful.
Because if one of them was just a little bit further back, it would be in an inspiring range, and
any other, or like I wouldn't have been charged because they ended up too far forward, or I could have had cover. Any other number of things.
Just curious from a TO perspective, when you say that, is that something because you're just pure lazy, or because of the clock? Because in Brisbane we've been using clocks in the last 3 or 4 tournaments,
which I'm loving, by the way.
Yes, but I'm just wondering whether or not the fact of clumping.
No, just lazy.
Just being lazy.
I'm not that worried about the clock in Firefight. I think probably because most of my opponents tend to clock out before me anyway. So
although you clocked out in that last.
Well, yeah, but that's
you still won.
I still won. I mean that was a very hard game for me to win. So maybe that's why. And I didn't have the same problem with the VMN, right? Because I was playing in Forces. I've got 3 models per unit.
Sure that last game was in Forces, which is completely opposite.
There's like a dozen models in the whole army.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, Mike, before you were mentioning, are we jumping ahead? Let's skip ahead. We'll actually talk now about unit size and the way that is impacting on footprint, and we'll also come to the concept of reach as well. Before we do, Luke, do you just want to quickly break us down the coherency rules? What are the rules within which we're working in order for placement of models in the cloud?
Yeah, sure. So if you've got a model with, a unit with more than one model in it, you're going to have the leader, and then you're going to have another number of other models. And those models, to be in coherency, have to be within 3 inches of the leader. Now, that means a part of that model's base has to be within 3-inch range of the leader model's base. However, if you've got 10 or more, that becomes 6 inches. So now you can spread out quite significantly. And you can spread out behind, as I do with my VMin, because I pick up a fistful. You can spread out to the sides to, say, put most of your models in cover, or you can spread out ahead to gain extra threat projection range on not charging or shooting, but other things that you can do with models being in certain positions. So that takes it from a, probably just slightly larger than 6-inch circle that you could take up to just larger than 12-inch circle that your unit could be taking up. And one of the interesting things about these is there's no rules that let you charge, say, between gaps between bases. You can't charge through that bubble of a unit. So if there's a gap between two buildings, 12-inch gap, you can put a horde there of something, make it take up the entire gap between the buildings, and now nothing can charge through that gap.
Very interesting. So this is as part of interpenetration of units, that units may not move through enemy models of the same unit, even if there is more than 1 inch between the moving model and the enemy models of the unit. So that means that you can effectively use your extended coherency of a larger unit to make a cloudy bubble in order to obscure an area of the board.
Yeah, I would just say as long as you don't come within, you would effectively treat the footprint of the unit as all of its models plus any direct line between any models.
Mm-hmm. One of the reasons I was thinking of looking this up is because, again, from the conversation we were having about the Reapers, and if you have a larger unit, are they going to be able to fit well within their coherency? But Luke, I guess you really called it out that it's not wholly within. You just need to have a part of the base within that 3-inch. So you are able to, but I do also take the point that with a 40 mil base, your options as to how to arrange it within that cloud are probably a lot more limited.
Yeah, it's probably worth being clear. I don't know whether this game explicitly calls it out or not, but generally in wargaming terms, if something says within, it just means partially within. And things are very explicit about being completely within if that's a requirement. There
are some things I think which do call out wholly within in a firefight. I can't recall off the top of my head.
Yeah, so within just means if you measure the distance between two things, that the distance is at or less than the distance required.
Mm-hmm. So this kind of comes to the extra concept I was thinking of, which is reach. So reach is how far you're able to position a model in your unit away from the leader. So that's where you can actually start doing some shenanigans just from having, say, a larger base size, and so your reach is increased by the extra width of the base. Or, as you were saying, with the 10 models, you actually have a larger coherency for you to play with. So reach is useful whenever you need a unit to make contact rather than the unit leader to make contact, as you can extend your effective range by your reach. So things that it can't be used for extending shooting or assault range, because those are measured from your leader. It also can't be used for extending your range for entering buildings or transports. That also explicitly calls out that it is when the leader makes contact. But it can be used for claiming HVAs. HVAs call out that you can move your unit to make contact. And that means if you have an extended coherency, because you have 10 plus models, or a larger coherency with the 3-inch plus a 40 mil base or 3-inch plus a 60 mil base, you're then able to reach and touch things more easily, in this case HVAs. Worth calling out that objectives do require the leader to be within 3-inch, so you can't do quite the same shenanigans there. The other potential use for it as well is trapping units in assault. and we'll come to some particular plays you can do with them. Luke, I know I've used some minor versions of this, but we've also tried to max it out in our shenanigans section as to exactly what you can do.
I wouldn't call that minor, but we'll get to that.
All right, so shenanigans then. So one of the things that I mentioned this within our controlled fire chat, just like, isn't it interesting that you're able to do this? And one of us went along to SpringCon and did it against their unsuspecting opponents. So this is in the extraction mission. You can put a unit with 10 or more models right on the edge of your deployment zone, so 12 inches up. That means you're just under 12 inches away from the HVA that is or an HVA that is placed on the center line, because that's the center line plus half the mil of a 25 mil base, so 12.5 mil. You can then advance that 10 plus unit up with its leader. It moves up, say, 6 inches for a normal unit. Because of the extra reach you get with the extended coherency of a 10 plus strong unit, you can then put one model, or more if you want to, but really all you need is one model moved to touch that HVA at your maximum coherency range, and they can then spend a short action to claim. That means a regular infantry unit is able to snag an high value asset off the center line, first activation if they want to. And Mike, you did it.
Yes. Yep, I did do that. Sorry, Jason. But yes, I did it to both HVAs on there. I used my 2 Scarecrow units, the 18 strong each in this list in there, and did exactly that. I waited to my very last activation. My whole list is very much MSU. There's about 100 models in the whole list, but there is 17 drops, so I can generally wait and activate last to go in, and if they choose to activate first, they can only deal with one of those 2 units. So did exactly that, moved forward, my leader 6 inches from the baseline, and then extended the model card out so it could actually be touching that HVA, and so I could claim it at the end of turn 1, and then basically my first 2 activations of turn 2 was
walking back into your deployment
basically pull my leader back 6 inches, and then because of that, extending that range of 6 inches, I could basically pull back that HVA 18 inches backwards into terrain, and then of course Scarecrows being stealthy, set them into some craters so they were getting cover.
And hit the dirt.
Which is where they sat from beginning of turn 2, so giving them -3, and then my rest of my army just then charged forward for the rest of the turn to stop them from getting in. Basically, you have to go through the rest of my army now to get to my 2 100 points or 90 odd point units of Scarecrows that were holding the 2 HVAs in my deployment zone.
That's fabulous. I realised you'd done it. I didn't realise you'd done it twice in the same game.
Twice in the same game. And what was, to carry on with the tactics, I guess my 2 Mind Screechers were actually hovering near those 2, so anything that went anywhere near those 2 HVAs I wanted to capture, they just blasted, and because they're psychic, they could shoot straight through the building. So anything that was getting close, I just went, nope, and said, no, thank you very much. So pinned them and then blasted them straight through the buildings. So, yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, and I know when we did our scenario overviews way back, I think in maybe our 2nd episode, where we were talking about the importance in extraction of making sure you have a plan for a first round claim on at least 1 HVA, and we were talking of scouts and legs generally, the idea that you can get a mule up there, out, and claim it. But this is a way to claim it while you're still only 6 inches from your deployment zone with your leader, so you can then step back into the deployment zone, first activation in the next round.
Gross. Because the other thing is, like with the HVAs, you're limited in the amount you can move per turn. So most units can't run away from the center line very quickly. They don't have to because they just leapfrog themselves back. Interestingly, though, I don't think there's a rule that lets you pick up and place the HVA when you claim it.
That's right. It becomes a part of your squad.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering what happens if you then take fire to become incoherent with the HVA. there's no rules that deal with that.
I don't believe there are rules that require you to remove casualties only within coherency. You are just required to re-establish coherency after your next advance action.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
I still slept like a baby. That night, so I still managed to sleep. So yeah, it is a trick that you can pull off with something like that. And I guess I could also potentially do that with my Spectres as well, because they're units of 15. But obviously, talking about shooting and the casualties, it was just better to do it with the 20. But I guess you can't do. Can you? No, beasts can't do it. You can't do it with zombies.
No,
you can do it with scarecrows.
Yes, you can.
Veermen could do it if they wanted to.
And Marines can do it. If anything. So.
Anyone that has 10 and can make sure that they don't die, commandos can do it.
You also mentioned reanimation division, because they can go to. I mean, and a lot of squads can go to 10. So and reanimation division can go to 12 with their 2 drones, and they're not dying in a hurry.
Yep. So it just brings a whole new thing to the overwhelm section, and people may want to have a look at those a bit more and take larger units. It's certainly a tactical advantage to be able to do so.
Recruits are dirt cheap. There's a lot of models in that. So I think it's better with units that can afford to take a few wounds, because they might take a few. If that's your strategy, you start off with 10 models, and in their activations before you get a chance to do it, they take a couple of models off. Now you can't do it anymore. So it does work, better with bigger units.
And it is also worth doing exactly as Mike outlined, where it is the late in the activation, which is also playing a little bit of a game of chicken, because if someone goes in and snaffles it before you, you can't do that anymore. But also, if you go up and get the early claim, you are absolutely begging to be charged, because they can charge that drone. It counts as part of your squad.
Yeah.
And if they win the fight against you, they're claiming it. So it's not a risk-free maneuver, but it just is a potential maneuver.
And pinning's not even good enough next turn, right? Because
because
they just take one advance action away and remove the pin and advance one away. Even charging them at the top of the next turn doesn't tend to be that, because a big unit like that may not get wiped out.
If you win the fight, you claim the HVA.
Ah, right. Yeah. So it is worth charging.
Yeah, it is worth charging. Maybe it burns as well, and make them activated, hanging out on the center line, and just really hope they fail that nerve.
Yeah, well, I mean, you've got you're still probably getting away with the other unit in this case where you do it with 2. I mean, if you do it with 3, Veerman could do it with 3. That would be amazing. I wish I'd done that now. So yeah, I mean, if they manage to take out one unit, you can still take the other one away and then put everything into that unit that's now only consolidated 3 inches back from where they were when they won combat. So they're still a tasty treat to try and snag off themselves. But speaking about how well you sleep at night, Sam, I'm pretty sure you can still sleep at night. Why don't you take us through something else?
All right, this next one needs a little bit of setting up, just because we need to have a little bit of a dive into exactly how units move into assault. I'll quickly just read out so we know we're getting all the technicalities of what's involved here. So, when assaulting an enemy unit, move the unit leader the shortest distance possible into base-to-base contact with an enemy model in the target unit using the normal movement rules. So that's the first thing. The leader has to go by the shortest route towards the closest model. Fair enough. Then, move the remaining models back into coherency, placing as many of them as possible into base-to-base contact with enemy models in the target unit. From that we have, you need to move the leader into the most direct point. You then need to maximize the amount of models that make base-to-base contact. The rest can then just be placed in coherency. Cool. All right, let me quickly just cover the rules for trapped now. In the section for moving directly away, so say the enemy has lost the fight, the leader model of the unit moving directly away follows the line moving up the required distance, ignoring any models in an enemy unit they are currently in base-to-base contact with. So that's fine. We know they can retreat and ignore any of the models that are placed. The last point that's important here is if at any point the leader would come into contact with an enemy unit, or if during the final placement of all models in coherency, any models are unable to be placed at least 1 inch from enemy models, then the unit is trapped and destroyed. That gives us all the ingredients for some shenanigan plays. So when we have a unit of 10 plus models and we declare a charge, I'm charging him with 30 zombies because that is the prime unit to be doing this with. Scarecrows as well, Mike. You can do shenanigans 2 ways with them.
Oh, I tried. It's a bit hard to pull off than it sounds, but I did try.
You charge in and your unit leader contacts their closest model. Great. You then bring in zombies until you have contacted all of the rest. Once you have made contact with as many models as possible, you can then take one zombie and put it 6 inches directly behind the enemy leader. You know the exact line they're going to retreat from because it is a direct line between your leader and their leader, and that gives you the direction of retreat. You place one model 6 inches directly behind their leader. Then, all you need to do is win the fight. When they retreat, they move directly back 6 inches, ignoring your models. They then try to put their unit into coherency. They can't because they are within 1 inch of an enemy model. The entire unit is destroyed in one round of assault by zombies. I've done some stuff I've never done exactly this. I've done some stuff which is similar to this to Luke and to other players as well, where you charge in, you put as many in, and then go, right, this is where the line of retreat is going to be, and it's going to hit this building. They're going to stop there. I'll place one model there to catch them. I've never been able to do the full 6 inch, you can't outrun zombies play, but it is totally valid.
We've spoken about this a few times now, and I think we generally agree that probably the fix for this, because this is pretty abusive. I think the abuse light, which is what Sam has been doing, is bad. I think.
Whoa!
Okay,
Yeah, we have been thinking about taking out Navio against Sam.
It does bad. Good people do bad things sometimes. I don't think that it really should work that way. I think traps should really be reserved for, if you've put yourself in a bad spot with your back to the wall, or if you've managed to get a unit behind to trap them and done strategic play, then traps doesn't feel like such of a gotcha. Mm-hmm. But these situations do feel like a bit of a gotcha, particularly for new players or even veteran players that just didn't think about it, right?
It's only because we've been actively looking at it, trying to see how we could game.
Yeah, so we've abused it even more than we thought you could. I think we generally agree that the fix for this is to just say that you can never be trapped purely by the models of the unit that you're in combat with. So yes, you could get trapped by a board edge or a building, like impassable terrain, enemy units, all those sorts of things, but purely using the charging unit to wrap around and block your retreat, that should probably go away. So I think the real crux of this as an issue, besides being gamey, and maybe not in the intended outcome, is that it requires a certain interpretation of several different rules to work together to make this situation work. Mm-hmm. And you kind of have to really understand how all of those things work and actually take liberties in your interpretation of the rules somewhat to arrive at this outcome, right? So directly away specifies that if you would touch an enemy unit that you die. So if there's even another unit behind you, a different unit entirely behind you, you would die by moving directly away. But then in the retreat, it says that you move directly away, but you stop if you would come within 1 inch of an enemy unit. That actually contradicts the statement about withdrawing units, ignoring the enemy models in the units that they're engaged with. Mm-hmm. And then there's more rules about, trapped beyond that, about, under which situations they're trapped. So I think the best thing you can do is just not do it. Don't do it to someone, and you don't have to, because what's going to happen is they're going to go, I don't agree with that. That's how this works. And then
people pull out their rule books.
You're pulling out your rule books. If you're on the clock, are you pausing it? Are you running someone's time down? There's a whole other host of problems that could come out of this. And then maybe even feels bad from your opponent, right? If it was Sam doing it to me, I'd probably laugh it off. If it was me doing it to someone, maybe they've been playing for 3 months or whatever, they would probably feel quite awful. What is important to understand about retreating, though, just to hammer on this point, is that, taking away the situation of zombies around behind you. Oh, and by the way, you have to place into base-to-base contact. So you have to have enough zombies against a small enough unit that the unit is completely encircled by models before you can place Gary out the back.
As well as, I should say, having your unit leader contact a point on their unit close enough to their unit leader that when you place a unit within 6-inch coherency of you,
Yes.
that when they make their retreat, they're still within 6 inches plus the bubble, etc.
Yeah, so it's hard to pull off. It's gamey, and it feels bad. So probably don't do it. But if it was another unit or a building behind, it is worth just reminding everyone that the sequence of events goes that the loser withdraws and they stop if they can't keep going. So they stop an inch away from an enemy unit, or they stop when they hit the table edge or a building.
Yep.
And then they are placed. And if they can be placed at that point in coherency, they are totally fine if they're outside of an inch of enemy units. And then the attacker makes their move. So you can't use the attacker's movement to trap a unit, right? They're safe from that situation.
Yeah, you can't use your consolidation move to catch them, effectively. But that's it. I do play, and like I said, this is the soft abuse that we were talking about before. I will absolutely go, I know that unit is about to be trapped against that building. I'm going to place this model in coherency so that when they conclude their retreat moves, they are trapped and killed.
Yes.
That's entirely legit.
That is. But like we said, maybe if it's the same unit, maybe that should just not be a thing.
Mike, I'm in need of a shower after hearing this debate back and forth on this.
Oh, not really. My only concern is the fact is it does seem to be slightly contradictory when that can cause, being a TO, I guess, and the fact is it starts to cause arguments and things like that. So I would appreciate it if the Rules Committee at some point in time in the future can clarify it all on exactly how they expect it to work. That's basically it. So I'm a little bit weird. It's actually it really is a corner case. I have attempted to do it. So no, I don't feel dirty, but it is a lot harder to pull off than it sounds.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, so there's a few of our musings on size, base sizes, unit sizes, and the sort of complex interplays you can do when looking to move your unit footprint and extend your unit's reach. Before we come to the end, shall we chat on Overwatch? For myself, as I mentioned last time, I'm very excited for the Dying Light campaign that's kicking off in just a few weekends. I'm going to dust off my Maison Labs, I think, because this narrative campaign is a little bit Maison themed. I haven't played by Maison, I don't think, since maybe SpringCon last year.
It's probably been a year, yes.
Yeah, so that'll be good. I'm keen to
Clash this year.
No, you Clash. Yeah, you played it at Clash. So in January this year.
Oh, that's right. I took it down to Canberra. Thank you. Yeah. So it has been under a year that I've played them. I'm still keen to dig them out after having played Asterians and Plague and so on more recently. I'm also, obviously, as I mentioned, looking forward to my Epic Warpath stuff appearing in the post. It can't be long now for some 10 mil action. Mike, what are you looking forward to?
Same thing. I'm looking forward to the campaign run by the local Mark. We've mentioned him before, so thank you very much. I'm glad to be able to just play and enjoy something and not have to be really involved in any organisation of that. So that'd be unusual for me, which is great. I have a few things I need to get to ready. I'll be playing my Night Stalkers in that. Thank you for freeing us there, Sam, to come into the universe. It's fantastic. Thank you. As I mentioned, there's a Halo coming up and that I'm going to be starting to demo a bit. But then there is the Kings of War 4th edition that's come through, and I have ordered myself the new two-player starter box. There's brand new faction to Zarkali and the new models for the Trident realms.
Oh, that's sweet.
Oh yeah, and there's such beautiful. Both of the sets look beautiful models. I don't know which set of models I like the most. I was only looking to do one more Kings of War army, and it looks like I might have ended up getting myself into 2 new Kings of War.
Dogs or fish first?
That is going to be a hard choice. I think I'm going to look at the sprues and what I need to assemble and what I like the look of the most. I loved assembling, believe it or not, and painting my Night Stalkers. And
assembling.
And then I loved that. It was fantastic. And if the models are anywhere near as good as what I did with the Night Stalkers, it will be a pleasure for me to assemble and paint all of those.
Bit of a ditto on both fronts for me, I guess. I'm looking forward to the Epic Warpath stuff, but mostly because I want to get some of the STLs to get, just fill in some of the harder to find, models for Firefight. So upscale them and throw them into my firefight armies.
I'm assuming vehicles rather than the infantry mostly.
Yeah, I mean, the infantry is not hard to... There should be no infantry in firefight that's hard to get, really. Maybe artificers are tricky sometimes, but that's about it. And yeah, the Kings of War 4th edition stuff, the Zakali look great. I am having an internal battle because they have that... It ends up being about $750 Australian for... It's like a mega army.
This is the one that's coming with the bag and everything.
I'm not sure, but it definitely comes with a lot of models. And I sat down and I said, based on what I know currently about Kings of War and what I'm looking at these models and thinking they might be worth points-wise, I pointed up the army, and it's probably somewhere in the realms between 2,500 and 3,500 points in this one box. So yeah, while it's got it's exactly 3 times the cost of the current mega armies, but it's around about 3 times the points value as well. And the models are quite a significant step up in quality, I think, from some of the stuff that Mantic's done in the past for the fantasy. So I'm battling my internal self about do I buy that or not. We'll see.
Well, that brings us to the end of another episode. So until next time, check your coherency. It's all about that base. And unleash controlled fire.
Hear the